Based on advanced photos and announcements, LEGO had planned a premium reimagining of the Idol Temple set from Raiders of the Lost Ark, a reskin of the Well of Souls mini playset, a reworked Temple of Doom, and a redo of the Last Crusade airplane chase set. I do find it odd that LEGO has such an obsession with this vehicle chase that they would opt to release it again as another variant rather than pick something else from Last Crusade that wasn't previously explored, like the tank, or the Grail Temple itself, which has finally been done by a third party that we plan to cover in the near future. Well, let's do this.
He who finds the Grail must face the final challenge.
What final challenge?
3 devices of such lethal cunning.
When you stop and consider the various Indiana Jones locations LEGO has turned into dedicated sets, including less memorable areas like the Peruvian cemetery from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the absence of the Grail Temple from the final act of Last Crusade is a crazy omission. Given how the environment is set up like an obstacle course, a true medieval gauntlet Indy is forced to survive, it seems perfect for a LEGO set with multiple play features. Honestly, looking at the choices for LEGO's 2023 assortment, it would have been more exciting had they announced 4 sets all based on the final areas from each of the 4 Indiana Jones films. Instead of the Idol Temple, an expanded Well of Souls to improve upon their anemic 2008 original. For the second set, a revised Temple of Doom, which admittedly LEGO had planned but then cancelled it. For the third set, the Grail Temple, which they've never offered. And for the fourth, yes, I'm saying it, a reimagined Temple of Akator from Crystal Skull. But hey, we got what we got. So it comes down to the LEGO hobbyists to start shoring up the range. And given Last Crusade's popularity with die-hard and casual fans, LEGO's reticence to do more with this film means customizers are having a field day. Whether it's creating the tank from thin air or upgrading those obvious dirt bikes used in the motorcycle chase set from 2008, while companies like Brickmania allow us to upgrade the minifigures of the German soldiers, Indiana Jones is being rescued by third parties.
What are you doing here? Rescuable. Come on.
To that end comes a brick building company called Tokmoc and their Temple of the Holy Grail. I'm always a little dubious making a purchase of a set like this versus gathering bricks myself for custom designs from fans, but given the intended scale of this piece and the amazing price I grabbed it for off Amazon, the risk was one worth taking. When it arrived, I was happy to see that the bricks themselves were decent quality and compatible with LEGO parts, with good clutch in 99% of the build. Some small detail areas like this column extension are hanging together on a wing and a prayer due to janky instructions combined with parts that just don't quite play well together, or the upper columns of the entryway not given enough clearance underneath the decorative urn to stand up straight. However, aside from these small bits of business, everything else in the set demonstrates a lot of ambition from the designers at Tokmoc. We should probably start with the minifigures. First up, we have Indiana Jones, who is a hybrid of the classic 2008 LEGO style where the head and hat are concerned, with details on the body reflective of the 2023 revised Indiana Jones minifigure. He sports that odd black pants belt and the printing on the back of the torso that adds more jacket detail that was unique to the 2023 version, even though that black belt is a step backward in character accuracy. A notable change to this figure is the color of his trousers, that are now a very rusty brown leaning toward orange. While this isn't at all correct for the original 3 Indiana Jones films, in some promo photos for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, his trousers have a color that you could pretend in minifigure form turns out looking like this. Again, your mileage may vary. He comes with his bag and whip, as well as a massive medieval book. If this is supposed to be the Grail Diary, holy hell! I gave him the diary accessory from the latest LEGO Fighter Chase set instead. Next up is his father, Henry Jones Sr. This one is a really mixed bag. Obviously, his hat is completely wrong. That's Charlie Chaplin's derby, not Sean Connery's tweed cap. What is nice about the clothing is the detail of having him in his shirt sleeves, which is correct to how he appears in the Grail Temple, a version LEGO has never provided. Where this figure really falters is the face print. He doesn't look like he has a defined mustache and beard. He looks like he's just come up from slamming his face into a pile of cocaine. You'll want to swap out his head and hat for the LEGO versions as soon as you can. Credit where credit is due, though. They printed the details of his shoes on his feet, the back of his vest, and the pleats in his trousers, something LEGO didn't even attempt, even though Tokmoc did cop out and didn't actually redo the torso art, so he's still in his suit coat, just without sleeves. We also get Walter Donovan, another Last Crusade character LEGO never offered us. Once again, impressive attempts at detail on his torso and legs. His face print is downright vampiric, which is a little much, and his weapon is no more than a modern police officer's club trying to masquerade as a pistol. While I have yet to consider a head swap for him, I've gone ahead and purchased another Walther PPK from Brickmania, the same one I used in my Living Daylights Aston Martin build, and snipped off the silencer so Donovan can have the stock PPK he uses in the film. This set also comes with Elsa Schneider, a character that was represented by LEGO for the original Venice Canal Chase set. This time, however, she's in her final act outfit from the desert. As with Donovan, her facial expression is a bit exaggerated, and I might swap it out in the future. For now, however, I've opted to swap out her hands with a black set, as she infamously wore black gloves that became a major plot point.
Elsa, your other hand, honey, I can't hold you!
I also grabbed a German cap from Brickmania to give myself the option of depicting her as she was at the beginning of the Grail Temple encounter.
I never expected to see you again.
This next one should have been a cool addition, but it kinda fumbles. Tokmoc opted to provide a Middle Eastern soldier, I assume one of the Haite army guys that makes the failed attempt to reach the Grail and loses his head in the process. They've taken the body from other military figures in terms of the basic details, cheaped out on the arm printing so he doesn't really have sleeves, and looks like he's going clubbing with the rest of the girls circa 2002. The worst part though? They gave him an AK-47! Everyone else is living their best 1938 life, and this guy's over here acting like he's playing GoldenEye, or the most cliché Taliban mercenary in minifigure history. Thankfully, Brickmania allowed me to get him both a cavalry saber and a Henry Martini rifle to correct that glaring error outright. Finally, we come to the Grail Knight himself, and this one is even weirder than the soldier guy. Because they didn't give him any legs! Well, I should amend that statement. They gave him legs, just no way to attach them to his body. This figure is meant to be permanently seated in front of the stone dais where he's reading his massive Bible. So they give you the legs without the hip joint piece, and then two matching gray plates to attach under his torso, and you're supposed to just plug that into the floor, and that's it. It's really strange, especially considering they provided him with a sword, that they decided not to spring for a hip joint for this one figure so he could stand up. Because when you grab a hip piece from another LEGO minifigure and put his legs on him, he still sits down in front of the dais with no problem. Weirder still is the inclusion of a Roman centurion helmet on the guy, and a replica of Sting from Lord of the Rings as his sword.
You're strangely dressed for a knight.
Given his beard accessory, helmet options are limited, so in the spirit of LEGO Castle, I gave him a classic knight helmet and a better sword. Okay, hearing all that, you probably assume the rest of this set is going to be a random series of lackluster choices and outright disasters. Actually, though, it's pretty damn decent. The set's design borrows from the concept of the 2023 Raiders of the Lost Ark Idol Temple Black Box set, with a series of reinforced sections all connected and each one having action features and details that reflect the location in Last Crusade. But it isn't a simple reskin of the Idol Temple set. It's a larger set overall with different engineering and only a scant few holdover styling parts from the LEGO original. As an example, they had a few jungle leaf pieces worked into the set that were present on the LEGO Idol Temple, but I tossed these from my build because the Grail Temple was a cave in the desert with nothing green around or inside it. There were also a lot of skulls and red floor plates throughout the entire set, trying to imply gore and bodies littered everywhere, which was very strange. And after I completed the build, I removed all of those and reworked those areas to erase their presence. It just looked chintzy and distracting. The last cosmetic change I made was to the entryway facade, removing the globe from the top of the urn. I know something similar to that sits atop the actual Petra treasury, but that detail in brick form didn't sit right to my eye, so I deleted it. The entryway itself looks really good as a depiction of the Grail Temple, even if it is undersized to the extent the figures can't use the front doorway, which is irritating. Inside, the first area has the movie-accurate twin lion statues leading into the first challenge, as well as the great seal on the floor that keepers of the Grail cannot cross with the Holy Cup. I was a bit disappointed the pieces of the floor seal were yellow and not silver, and the wagon wheel image in the center isn't exactly a cruciform engraving, but I'm glad the seal is represented.
Don't cross the seal! The knight warned us not to take the Grail from here!
The action feature of it spinning around is a bit weak sauce when compared with the entire room collapsing into a bottomless chasm in the film, but overall, it's just a fancy foyer. What's really important are the 3 final challenges. This is where Tokmoc really dials up their eye for detail on the set to match Last Crusade. Just as in the film, the path to the breath of God is impeded by thick spider webs, and then into a stone chamber. The instructions call for a spider on the wall in this area, which I almost feel should be in the next room, but I'll get to that in a minute. This room, at the pull of the lever on the section base, releases the hidden blades that, similarly to the film, launch out of both the floor and the wall. In the film, the floor blade doesn't launch toward Indy's face, but cuts across the floor. I've often wondered where the tuck roll figures into the actions of a penitent man. I get the kneeling, but I'm amused that Indy also knew to ninja flip at that moment too. In terms of the playset, this room is a really cool effort. I'm not wild about the very Peruvian-looking cap disc on the wall, and I'll probably replace that in the future. And I'm also not sure about the long-term durability of the mechanism, as it relies on silicone bands. However, this room is overall a big win for the set. But it's the next room, the Word of God, that has become my favorite section.
The Word of God! No, Henry. Try not to talk.
Indy must move aside another spider web, just as he did in the film, to enter this room. And there on the floor are all of the letters, some the correct ones, while the wrong ones will send him falling to his death. The gimmick here is really cool, as after the wrong letters collapse, a turn of the knob brings them all back up, repairing the room. I continue to fiddle with these letter plates, changing the positions of the characters Indy needs to land on, trying to find the most effective arrangement for the scene. I also think the spider included in this set should have been placed in this room as a nod to an actual deleted scene from the film. The original concept for this challenge involved Indy stepping on the wrong letter, which then released a large tarantula out of the floor onto him. And this was filmed, and even made it into the official Last Crusade storybook and novelization. The filmmakers didn't think that was suspenseful enough after shooting the scene, so they reimagined the Word of God as a bottomless pit under the wrong flagstones. While this might seem a little repetitive in light of the Path of God also being a bottomless pit challenge the very next second, I can understand how a tarantula has even less to do with the Cup of Christ, and it also begs the question, how did the knight convince a tarantula to drink from the Grail so it would remain immortal in that hole the entire time? Given that, how would Indy have stopped an immortal spider? Anyway, moving on. The Word of God and the Path of God are essentially part of the same section of the layout. The designer did a nice job adding the lion carving here, despite it being on the opposite side of the chasm. The bridge is short, but it's nicely built with a transparent layer over the top to imply the invisible look it had in the film. And there's a simple push mechanism to tilt the bridge and send minifigures falling to their deaths. Finally, we arrive at the Grail Sanctuary itself, with really impressive detail packed into the altar and the niche on the wall behind it. All of the false grails and decor of the space are represented here, with a single brown cup included to identify the true Grail. They even made sure to include the holy water font that Indy uses to fill the Grail. And, if you're feeling really morbid, they included a skull head for Donovan to drink from the false grail and die.
He chose poorly.
All things considered, this is an impressive effort from a third-party brickmaker. There are a number of smaller things I would swap out, like the aforementioned Peruvian skull plates, and finding silver or light gray parts for the Great Seal in the first room, and I'll be doing all that in the near future. However, the lion's share of this playset is really on point, and shows that whoever designed this really paid attention to this sequence from Last Crusade and wanted to get it right. As I get closer to completing my goal of representing Indiana Jones's adventures in brick build format, the Tokmoc set has been a fun and welcome discovery.
You have chosen wisely.